The exhibition halls of harmony, 7 stretched for miles in every direction, filled with the gentle sounds of cooing, chirping, and soft bleating. Riel walked slowly past display after display, her multiple eyes taking in the carefully curated presentations of companion creatures from across the galaxy. Each booth showcased the pride of its species, the perfect examples of what made a proper companion animal. The Centauri delegation had brought their fluff balls, round creatures covered in silk-soft fur that did nothing but eat sweet grasses and hum contentedly. They were rated 9.8 on the Galactic Safety Index. Perfect companions. Harmless. Predictable. Next to them, the Aquilon displayed their crystal jellies, translucent beings that floated in contained environments and pulsed with soothing bioluminescent patterns. They had no teeth, no claws, no defense mechanisms whatsoever. A perfect 10.0 on the safety scale. The shrikes, tall and bird-like themselves, presented their nectar moths, delicate flying creatures that fed exclusively on flower pollen and could barely support their own weight. Another 9.9 rating. Riel had attended this expo for 7 cycles now. Every year, the same pattern. Every species in the galaxy seemed to have reached the same conclusion about companionship. Choose the weakest, most harmless creatures available. The ones that could never pose a threat. The ones that required protection rather than providing it. She found it all rather boring, if she was being honest with herself, that a commotion near the security checkpoint caught her attention. 2 guards were having an animated discussion with a visitor, their translation devices working overtime. "I understand your concerns," one guard was saying, "but the human delegation has been assigned to the special handling wing for very specific reasons." Riel's sensory stalks perked up. Humans. She had heard of them, of course. The newcomers from the death world called Earth. They had only joined the galactic community 3 standard cycles ago, and already their reputation preceded them. Strange beings who came from a planet so hostile that most species would classify it as uninhabitable. "Where is this special handling wing?" she asked the guards. They both turned to look at her, clearly surprised that anyone would ask. The taller guard pointed toward a corridor marked with yellow caution strips. "Section 7D, Ambassador Riel. But I would advise against visiting without proper safety protocols." Safety protocols? Riel felt her curiosity intensifying. For companion animals? The guards exchanged glances. The shorter one spoke carefully. "The human companions are not like other species' companions, Ambassador. They are unpredictable, potentially dangerous. Dangerous companion animals." The concept seemed contradictory. The entire purpose of companion creatures was that they posed no danger whatsoever. That was the foundation of the galactic safety standards for companion species, established over 2,000 cycles ago. Riel made her decision. "I will visit them." The guards tried to protest, but she was an ambassador with full clearance. They could only watch as she walked towards Section 7D, her diplomatic robes trailing behind her. The special handling wing was quieter than the main exhibition halls. The first thing Riel noticed was the absence of the safety rating displays that were mandatory in every other section. The second thing she noticed was the smell. Not unpleasant, but different. Muskier. Wilder. She approached the first enclosure and froze. Inside was a human male, tall by galactic standards, with the oddly symmetrical features common to his species. But it was not the human that stopped her. It was the creature beside him. It stood on 4 legs, covered in thick gray and white fur. Its mouth was partially open, revealing teeth that were clearly designed for tearing meat. Its eyes were alert, intelligent, and focused directly on Riel. She recognized it from the Earth database she had studied. A wolf, an apex predator from one of Earth's many hostile ecosystems. "You look surprised," the human said, his voice calm and friendly. He placed one hand on the wolf's head, fingers scratching behind its ears. The predator's eyes half closed in apparent pleasure. "That is a carnivore," Riel managed to say. "A hunter species." "Yes," the human agreed. "This is Storm. He's my companion and my best friend." Best friend. The words did not compute. One did not have best friends who could kill and eat them. That was not how companionship worked. "I don't understand," Riel admitted. Why would you choose a predator as a companion? Your database says wolves hunt in packs. They take down prey much larger than themselves. They're dangerous. The human, who had introduced himself as David, smiled. Storm could be dangerous, yes. He's strong, fast, and intelligent. But he's chosen to be part of my pack. I'm his family. He would never hurt me. How can you be certain? Riel asked. Her analytical mind was struggling with the variables. No compliance chip was visible on the creature. No distrants. No safety modifications at all. Because trust works both ways, David said simply. I trust Storm with my life. He trusts me with his. That's what makes us family. Riel looked past David and noticed other humans in the wing, each with their own companion creature. A woman stood with a massive feline, its spotted coat gleaming under the lights. Another human had a large reptile coiled around his shoulders. A third worked with a bird of prey perched on her arm, its talons sharp enough to puncture flesh. Not a single one of these creatures would rate above a 3.0 on the Galactic Safety Index. Most would rate below 1.0. They were predators, hunters, creatures designed by evolution to kill. And yet the humans moved among them with casual ease, showing no fear at all. Would you like to meet Storm properly? David asked. Every instinct Riel possessed screamed at her to refuse, to back away, to retreat to the safe exhibitions where companions knew their place as harmless, dependent creatures. But something else stirred in her. Something she had not felt in a very long time. Curiosity. Real curiosity. Yes, she heard herself say. I would like that very much. The human quarters smelled different from anywhere else on the station. Riel could detect traces of fur, scales, feathers, and something else she could not quite identify. Life, perhaps. Raw and unfiltered. David had invited her to learn more about human companion bonding, and despite the warnings from her colleagues, she had accepted. Now she sat in a common area while Storm lay on the floor nearby, his yellow eyes tracking her movements with unnerving precision. Let me show you something, David said, pulling up a holographic display. This is Earth. The planet materialized before them, spinning slowly. Blue oceans, green land masses, white ice caps. It looked beautiful, deceptively peaceful. Your database lists Earth as a Class 12 death world, David continued. Do you know what that means? Riel nodded. Class 12 indicates a planet where survival requires constant adaptation to hostile conditions. Extreme weather, aggressive fauna, limited safe zones. That's putting it mildly, David said with a laugh that held no humor. He zoomed in on landmass. This is where I grew up. We had predators that could smell you from miles away. Insects whose venom could kill in minutes. Plants that were poisonous to touch. Weather that could shift from calm to deadly in hours. The display showed footage of Earth wildlife. Creatures with claws, fangs, venom, horns. Riel watched a massive brown bear catch fish from a river. Saw a great cat stalking through tall grass. Witnessed a snake unhinging its jaw to swallow prey whole. Everything on your planet seems designed to kill, Riel observed. Not designed, David corrected. Evolved. And yes, danger is everywhere on Earth. There is no such thing as a truly safe creature where we come from. Even the herbivores can be deadly if threatened. He changed the image to show a large animal with impressive antlers. This is a moose. It eats only plants, but it's killed more humans than most predators have. Size, strength, and a bad temper are enough. Riel felt her understanding of Earth solidifying. It was not just a dangerous planet. It was a planet where danger was the baseline, the default state of existence. So you bonded with predators because you had no other choice, she asked. No, David said firmly. We bonded with predators because we respected them. Before Riel could ask what he meant, another human entered. A woman with dark skin and kind eyes, carrying a large snake draped across her shoulders. The serpent was easily 3 times as long as the woman was tall, its scales gleaming like polished stone. This is Patricia, David introduced. And that's her companion, Jade. The snake's tongue flicked out, tasting the air. Riel instinctively drew back. Jade is a python from Earth's tropical regions, Patricia explained, seemingly unbothered by the massive reptile on her body. She's a constrictor. She kills by wrapping around prey and squeezing until they can't breathe. And you choose to have such a creature touch you? Riel asked, horrified. Patricia smiled. Jade has never hurt me. Not once in the 8 years we've been together. She trusts me to feed her, care for her, keep her warm. I trust her to know the difference between prey and family. But how do you know she won't make a mistake? Riel pressed. How can you be certain? I can't be completely certain, Patricia admitted. But that's true of any relationship, isn't it? I understand her body language. I know when she's hungry, stressed, content, curious. We communicate, even though we're different species. Another human joined them, this one carrying a small container with air holes. Inside, Riel could see a scorpion, its tail curved and ready to strike. Don't worry, the man said, noticing her reaction. Leo here is safely contained when I'm in public spaces. But at home, he roams free in my quarters. That's venomous, Riel stated. Very, the man agreed cheerfully. One sting could cause serious pain and illness. But Leo has been with me for 3 years. He's never stung me. Not when I feed him, not when I clean his habitat, not even when I have to move him for medical checks. David spoke up again. Do you see the pattern, Riel? We don't choose companions that can't hurt us. We choose companions that could hurt us, but choose not to. That's where trust comes from. Riel struggled to process this. But why? Why take such risks? Why not use technology to make them safe? Genetic modification, behavioral programming, compliance chips? The room went silent. Patricia and the scorpion handler exchanged glances with David. When David spoke again, his voice was quiet but intense. Because that wouldn't be a relationship. That would be slavery. The word hung in the air. When you remove an animal's ability to choose, David continued, you remove everything that makes the bond meaningful. Storm obeys me not because I've programmed him to, but because he wants to, because we're pack, because he's chosen me just as I've chosen him. Patricia nodded. Jade could leave any time she wanted. My quarters have vents she could escape through. She stays because this is her home and I'm her family. But what about safety? Riel asked, feeling her worldview cracking. What about the safety index standards? What about protecting yourselves? David stood and walked to Storm. He knelt beside the wolf, and the predator immediately nuzzled against him, making a sound that was almost a purr. We come from a world where safety is an illusion, David said softly. Everything is dangerous. So we learn to find safety not in the absence of danger, but in the presence of trust. We learn that the strongest bonds are built with those who could hurt us but never would. He looked up at Riel. Your people chose companions that are weak so you could feel strong. We chose companions that are strong so we could feel trusted. Riel had no response. She simply sat there, watching a human and a wolf share a moment of perfect understanding, and wondered if perhaps her entire species had been wrong about what companionship really meant. The coolant leak started small, just a hairline fracture in a maintenance conduit on level 14. Within minutes, toxic vapor flooded through the ventilation system into the main exhibition halls where thousands of beings admired their safe, gentle companions. Riel was reviewing diplomatic notes in her quarters when the emergency alarms began their piercing wail. She rushed to her viewport and saw chaos erupting below. Aliens ran in all directions, many carrying or dragging their companion creatures. The animals that had seemed so peaceful now added to the panic, their fear responses triggering stampedes and crushing injuries. She grabbed her emergency respirator and headed for the exits, following the emergency lighting. Behind her, she could hear her own companion, a gentle grass eater named Puff, bleating in terror. She tried to carry the creature, but it thrashed too wildly, its prey instincts overwhelming any training. The corridors filled with toxic yellow mist. Through the haze, Riel saw Centauri trying desperately to corral their fluff balls, which scattered in every direction. Aquilin frantically sealed emergency containers around their crystal jellies, but many shattered in the confusion. Shrike delegates abandoned their nectar moths entirely, the delicate creatures too fragile to survive the harsh conditions. The safe companions, bred for generations to be harmless and dependent, had no survival skills at all. They panicked, they fled, they froze. Many were dying simply from fear and stress. Riel made it to a sealed compartment and activated the door controls. Nothing happened. The system was locked down. She was trapped, and her respirator was already flashing a low oxygen warning. Through the small window in the door, she could see the toxic mist growing thicker. Her vision began to blur. This was how it would end, she thought dimly. Suffocated in a sealed room while her companion died in her quarters because she had taught it to be helpless. Then something moved in the mist, a shape, large and low, to the ground, pushing through the toxic air with purpose. Yellow eyes gleamed. Storm. The wolf moved with absolute confidence, his nose to the ground, following a scent trail. Behind him came David, masked and carrying equipment. The human spotted Riel through the window and immediately went to work on the door controls. Override panel is fried. David shouted through his mask. Storm, find another way. The wolf circled the compartment, sniffing. He paused at a ventilation grate low on the wall, then looked back at David and barked once. David understood immediately. He pulled tools from his belt and removed the grate. The opening was small, too small for him, but perhaps large enough for Riel. Can you fit through? David called. Riel nodded, already moving. She squeezed through the vent, her diplomatic robes tearing. David pulled her out the other side and fitted a spare respirator over her face. Follow Storm, he said. He knows the safe routes. They moved through the chaos, and Riel witnessed something extraordinary. Throughout the station, humans and their companions worked as coordinated teams. Patricia's python, Jade, moved through flooded corridors, her heat-sensing organs detecting trapped aliens through walls. Patricia followed, marking locations for rescue teams. Robert and his bear cub, now grown into a massive adult, shifted debris that would have required industrial equipment to move. The bear's enormous strength cleared blocked passages, creating escape routes that Lynn's falcon flew reconnaissance patterns, its sharp eyes spotting survivors from above and guiding rescue teams with precision. The scorpion handler used his companion's ability to navigate tight spaces, sending the small creature through collapsed areas to find signs of life. Every human companion, every creature that the galaxy had deemed too dangerous to be allowed in normal exhibition spaces, was saving lives. Storm led Riel through a series of service corridors that remained clear of toxins. They found groups of terrified aliens huddled together, their gentle companions either dead or fled. The wolf went to each group, his presence somehow calming rather than frightening. He would sniff them, determine they were alive, and move on while David administered aid. They discovered a sealed chamber with 15 Aquilin trapped inside. The crystalline beings were beginning to crack from stress and oxygen deprivation. David could not break through the reinforced door. Storm began digging at the base of the door where a gap had formed. His claws tore through metal and composite materials. David joined him, using tools to widen the gap Storm created. Together, human and wolf made an opening large enough to pass respirators through, then pulled the Aquilin out one by one. Hours passed. The toxic mist slowly cleared as emergency systems rerouted and purified the air. Riel stayed with David and Storm, helping where she could, witnessing the coordinated rescue efforts. She saw a young Centauri child, separated from family and crying. Storm approached slowly, tail wagging gently. The child stared at the predator with wide eyes. The wolf lay down, making himself small and non-threatening, and the child reached out to touch his fur. Storm stayed perfectly still, providing comfort, until the child's parents were found. She watched Patricia's python form a protective coil around 3 injured shrikes, her body warmth keeping them from going into shock while they waited for medical help. She observed Robert's bear gently carrying unconscious aliens in her massive jaws, transporting them to safety with a delicacy that seemed impossible for such a powerful creature. When the emergency finally ended, over 200 lives had been saved by the coordinated efforts of humans and their dangerous companions. The medical bay overflowed with grateful aliens, many of whom had been rescued by the very creatures they had feared and protested against. Riel sat in a recovery area, accepting water and watching David check Storm for injuries. The wolf had scratches and burns from moving through dangerous areas, but his tail still wagged when David praised him that a station official approached, a high-ranking Centauri administrator named Solon. His expression was complicated, mixing gratitude with something else. Concern, perhaps fear. "The council has called an emergency session," Solon announced. "We must address the matter of human companions. Today, they saved lives. But we must ask ourselves whether creatures this capable of action are safe to remain among us at all." Riel felt anger surge through her exhaustion. They just saved hundreds of lives. "Yes," Solon agreed, "which proves they are capable of great power. Power that could just as easily be turned to harm." The battle, Riel realized, was far from over. The Galactic Council Chamber held representatives from 47 species, and every one of them had an opinion about what had happened on Harmony 7. Riel sat in the observer section, still wearing bandages from a rescue, watching the proceedings with growing frustration. High Arbiter Solon stood at the central podium, his crystalline form refracting the chamber lights into rainbow patterns. His voice carried authority accumulated over 3 centuries of service. "We gather to address a matter of unprecedented concern," Solon began. "The human companions have demonstrated capabilities that exceed all safety parameters. While we acknowledge their assistance during the recent emergency, we must consider the implications of allowing such powerful creatures to move freely among galactic citizenry." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. A Shrike counselor stood, her feathers ruffled. "I watched a human's flying predator carry emergency supplies through toxic atmosphere. The speed, the precision, the strength. Such a creature could easily be weaponized. My analysis concurs," added an Aquilon representative, their voice bubbling through translation. "The human serpent detected heat signatures through solid walls. The canine navigated by scent through conditions that blinded our sensors. These are not companions. These are biological weapons systems." Solon nodded gravely. "Precisely my concern. Today they saved lives because humans directed them to do so. But what happens when human interests conflict with galactic peace? What happens if these creatures are commanded to harm rather than help?" More voices joined in support. They cited bite force statistics, venom potency analyses, predator efficiency ratings. They spoke of children who might encounter these creatures, of the psychological impact of living near apex predators, of the fundamental violation of 2 millennia of companion animal safety standards. Riel could not stay silent. She activated her speaker request, and Solon, perhaps out of respect for what she had endured, granted her the floor. "I was rescued by Storm," Riel said, her voice steady despite her anger. "A wolf. A predator that could have left me to die. Instead, he led David through toxic corridors, found me when sensors had failed, and stayed with me until I was safe." She paused, looking around the chamber. "How many of your gentle companions would have done the same? How many of them even survived?" The chamber fell silent. It was an uncomfortable truth. Over 300 companion animals had died during the emergency, most from simple panic and inability to adapt to crisis conditions. That Solon's response was measured. "Your gratitude is understandable, Ambassador, but emotion should not override reason. The statistical danger these creatures represent cannot be dismissed." "Then let us hear from the humans themselves," Riel challenged. "Let them explain their position before we pass judgment." After a brief consultation, David was called to testify. He entered with Storm at his side, and Riel noticed how many counselors shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The wolf's presence dominated the chamber, despite his calm demeanor. "Thank you for allowing me to speak," David said. He activated a holographic display. "I want to show you something about Earth's history with companion animals." The image showed primitive humans living in caves, harsh landscapes surrounding them. Then came wolves, circling the firelight. 40,000 years ago, wolves and humans formed the first partnership, David explained. "We did not capture them. We did not force them. They chose to approach our fires, and we chose to share our food. Over generations, that choice became a bond. The images changed, showing the evolution from wolf to dog, the incredible variety of forms that emerged. We shaped each other, David continued. They became more attuned to human communication. We became more attuned to their needs. But we never removed their teeth, never bred out their strength, because that strength, that capability you fear, is what makes them valuable. He showed footage of dogs herding livestock, protecting children, finding lost people, detecting diseases, providing comfort to the ill and elderly. This is a horse, David said, changing the image to show a massive equine. One kick could kill a human instantly. We have been riding them for 6,000 years. They carry us, work with us, trust us with their lives while we trust them with ours. More images flowed past. Cats that hunted deadly prey to protect human food stores. Falcons that returned from the sky despite being able to fly away forever. Dolphins that guided ships and rescued drowning sailors. Every single partnership is built on the same principle, David said. Mutual respect. The animal chooses to be with us. We choose to honor that choice. Remove the choice, and you remove everything that makes the bond meaningful. Solon interrupted. But you admit these creatures could harm you. You admit the danger. Yes, David agreed. And that is exactly the point. Storm could harm me. He has the teeth, the strength, the predator instincts. But in 8 years together, he has never done so. Not once. Not when I accidentally stepped on his tail. Not when I was injured and helpless. Not when he was in pain and I had to treat his wounds. He placed his hand on Storm's head. The wolf leaned into the touch. You want to know what makes a bond strong? David asked the chamber. It is not the absence of danger. It is the presence of trust despite the danger. Storm proves his loyalty every single day by choosing not to use his power against me. I prove mine by trusting him with my life. A counselor from a methane-breathing species spoke through multiple translators. What you describe is admirable in theory. But how do we know this trust extends to our species? How do we know your companions will not see us as prey? David nodded to Storm, who stood and walked calmly to the center of the chamber. Dozens of beings tensed, but the wolf simply sat and looked around with calm yellow eyes. Storm has never met most of your species before the station emergency, David said. But he saved them anyway. He protected Centauri children. He guided Aquilin to safety. He did this not because I commanded it, but because he understood they needed help. He pulled up security footage from the disaster. The images showed Storm defending alien young from debris, Patricia's python shielding injured shrikes with her body, Robert's bear carrying unconscious Aquilin with impossible gentleness. These creatures you fear showed protective instincts toward complete strangers, David said quietly. They risked themselves for people they had never met. They did this because we taught them that protecting others is what pack does, what family does. The chamber remained silent as the footage played. Finally, Solon spoke. The council will vote on whether human companions may remain. Given today's testimony and the rescue efforts, I expect a favorable outcome. But understand this, humans. The galaxy will be watching. One incident, one injury, and this decision will be reconsidered. The vote was called. It passed, barely, with many abstentions. Human companions could stay, but as Riel watched David and Storm leave the chamber together, she knew the real battle had just begun. Laws had changed. Minds had not. 3 weeks after the council vote, Riel found herself doing something she would have considered unthinkable a month earlier. She was learning to read wolf body language. See how his ears are forward. David pointed to Storm, who was watching a station maintenance drone pass by. That means he's interested but not threatened. If his ears went back flat, that would signal fear or aggression. Riel made notes on her datapad. Around them, other aliens had gathered for what had become an unofficial education series. David had not planned to become a teacher, but the requests kept coming. Beings who had seen the rescues, who had been saved by creatures they had feared, now wanted to understand that a young Aquilin named Trell approached nervously, his tentacles quivering. May I ask a question? Of course, David said. The snake companion, the one called Jade. I watched her during the emergency. She formed a barrier between falling debris and 3 of my clutch mates. A constrictor python. She could have crushed them instead. How did she know to protect them? Patricia stepped forward with Jade draped across her shoulders as always. Want to meet her properly? Trell's bioluminescence flickered with obvious fear, but he nodded. Patricia knelt down and gently encouraged Jade to slide onto the floor. The python, massive and muscular, moved with fluid grace. She approached Trell slowly, tongue flicking. She's tasting your scent, Patricia explained. Learning about you. Snakes don't have great vision, so they rely on chemical signals. Stay calm and let her investigate. Jade circled Trell once, then twice. The Aquilans stood frozen, every survival instinct screaming at him to flee. But he held his ground. Finally, Jade settled into a loose coil near Trell's base, apparently satisfied. Patricia smiled. She's decided you're not prey and not a threat. You're just another being sharing space with her. Now watch this. Patricia took a piece of prepared food from her pack and offered it to Jade. The snake took it delicately, her movements controlled despite her power. See how gentle she is, Patricia said. That same jaw strength she uses to kill prey, she's learned to modulate. She knows the difference between feeding and fighting, between prey and family. Trell's fear visibly diminished. How long did it take to teach her this control? I didn't teach her, Patricia said. She already knew. Predators are not mindless killing machines. They're intelligent, capable of complex decisions. Jade knows when to hunt and when to rest, when to strike and when to be gentle. I just gave her a reason to choose gentleness around me. More questions followed. An elderly shrike wanted to know about Lynn's falcon. How could a predatory bird, designed to kill on the wing, be trusted to return when released? Lynn brought her falcon, a magnificent creature named Sky, to demonstrate. She removed his hood and raised her arm. The bird took flight, soaring up to the high ceiling of the station common area. Every being present watched, expecting the bird to seek escape. Instead, Sky performed aerial maneuvers, showing off his speed and agility. Then, at Lynn's call, he returned, landing on her arm with talons that could pierce flesh, but instead gripped with perfect, careful pressure. Sky could leave any time he wants, Lynn explained. The station has open flight zones. He could fly to them and live free. But he comes back because this is home. I'm his flock. He's chosen this life. Over the following days, Riel spent more time with David and Storm. She learned about pack hierarchy, about how wolves communicated through body language, about the complex social bonds that made them loyal to their chosen family. One evening, David took her to a quiet observation deck. Storm came along as always. I want to tell you something, David said, looking out at the stars. When I was young, maybe 10 standard years old, I was lost in wilderness. My family's transport crashed. I was the only survivor. Riel listened, sensing this was important. I was alone for 3 days, David continued. Cold, hungry, terrified. On the 3rd night, I heard wolves howling. I was sure they were going to kill me. I climbed a tree and waited to die. Storm moved closer to David, pressing against his leg. But they didn't attack. They circled the tree for a while, then left. The next morning, I found a freshly killed rabbit at the base of the tree. The wolves had left it for me. They fed you? Riel asked, amazed. They did. For 2 more days, until rescuers found me. The pack would bring food and leave it. They protected me from other predators. Kept me alive. David's hand found Storm's head. When I was old enough, I went back to that forest. I wanted to understand wolves, to thank them somehow. That is where I found Storm. He was a pup, orphan like I had been. I raised him, and he became my family. Just like that pack saved me, I saved him. So your bond is built on mutual rescue, Riel observed. More than that, it's built on understanding that we need each other. Humans are not the strongest species, not the fastest, not the most deadly, but we understand cooperation. We understand that real strength comes from choosing to protect rather than harm. Riel thought about her own companion, Puff, who had died during the emergency. She had chosen Puff because the creature was safe, harmless, unable to hurt her. But that safety had been an illusion. When crisis came, Puff had been helpless, and so had she. I want what you have with Storm, Riel said suddenly. That bond. That trust. David looked surprised. It's not easy. It requires patience, understanding, and a willingness to be vulnerable. I know, Riel said. I've been thinking about this since the rescue. My entire life, I have chosen safety over connection. I have surrounded myself with things that cannot hurt me, but they also cannot save me, cannot truly be partners. She looked at Storm, who gazed back with those intelligent yellow eyes. I want to try bonding with a human companion animal. Will you help me? David smiled. It would be my honor, but we need to find the right match for you. Not every predator is right for every person. The bond has to work both ways. Over the next weeks, David introduced Riel to various possibilities. She met Robert's bear, too large and intimidating. Patricia's python, too alien in its thinking. Lynn's falcon, too independent. Then she met Copper, that he was a red fox, smaller than Storm, with bright russet fur and curious dark eyes. He had been rescued from an illegal exotic trade operation and was looking for a bonded partner. When Riel knelt down, the fox approached cautiously. He sniffed her, tilted his head, and made a soft chirping sound. He's interested, David said. Foxes are intelligent, adaptable, and loyal. Smaller than wolves, but still predators. Still capable. Still deserving of respect. Copper placed one paw on Riel's leg, his eyes meeting hers. In that moment, Riel felt something shift inside her. Not fear, though the fox had teeth and claws. Not the false security of her previous companion. Something new. Hope. Trust. The beginning of a bond built not on safety, but on mutual choice. Yes, she whispered to Copper. You and I, let's be family. 6 months had changed everything and nothing at all. Riel stood in her quarters on Harmony, 7, watching Copper investigate a new enrichment toy she had purchased for him. The fox pounced on it, tossed it in the air, and chased it under her desk. His playful energy still amazed her, so different from the sedentary nature of her previous companion. Good morning, Copper, she said softly. The fox's ears perked up at her voice. He emerged from under the desk and trotted over, pressing against her leg in greeting. 6 months ago, this simple gesture would have terrified her. Now it filled her with warmth. Her terminal chimed with an incoming message. David, asking if she was ready for today's presentation. The annual Companion Expo had returned to Harmony, 7, and this year would be vastly different from the last. Riel gathered Coppa's travel carrier, not because he needed to be confined, but because the station corridors would be crowded. The fox hopped in willingly, understanding the routine. Trust, she had learned, went both ways. The exhibition halls buzzed with activity, but the atmosphere had shifted. The main galleries still housed traditional companions, the safe herbivores and gentle creatures that most species preferred. But now a new wing had opened, marked with a sign that Red Cross Species Understanding Institute. Riel entered with Copper and found the space transformed. Multiple species mingled here now, not just humans. There were still fewer non-humans than traditional companion owners, but the numbers grew every cycle. Trell was there with his new companion, a monitor lizard named Scale. The young Aquilin had spent months learning about reptile care, and now he and Scale moved together with easy familiarity. Ambassador Riel. Trell greeted her, his bioluminescence pulsing with happiness. Scale and I are demonstrating feeding behaviors today. Would you like to observe? I would be honored, Riel replied. She watched as Trell fed Scale prepared meat, the lizard's powerful jaws gentle despite their strength. Other aliens gathered to watch, asking questions, losing their fear bit by bit. That a Shrike researcher named Kira approached with a large black bird perched on her shoulder. This is Shadow, Kira said. He's a raven from Earth. David helped me understand that intelligence and loyalty matter more than size or power. The raven cawed once, then mimicked Kira's voice perfectly. Hello, Riel. Riel laughed in delight. Remarkable. He learns new words every day, Kira said proudly. Yesterday, he told a maintenance worker to have a nice shift. The worker nearly dropped her tools in shock. Throughout the institute, similar scenes played out. An elderly Centauri gentleman worked with a small Earth cat, learning that predators could also be affectionate. A group of young Aquilin took notes as Patricia demonstrated snake handling techniques. Robert's bear, now fully grown and massive, gently accepted treats from alien children under careful supervision. But the most significant change was not in the institute itself. It was in the main exhibition halls. Riel walked through them later, Copper at her side on a loose lead. She noticed aliens looking at them differently now. Some still showed fear, yes, but more showed curiosity. Parents pointed them out to children, explaining rather than warning. A T1 booth, a Centauri breeder, displayed their traditional fluff balls. But now they also included information about the creature's limitations, their lack of survival instincts, their need for constant protection. "We want to be honest," the breeder explained to Riel. "After the disaster, we lost nearly our entire breeding stock. They could not adapt. We still love them, still breed them, but we acknowledge they are not suited for all situations." It was not an endorsement of human companion philosophy, but it was acknowledgement. That mattered. Riel made her way to the main presentation hall where she would speak. The space was packed, standing room only. David waited for her at the entrance with Storm. "Nervous?" he asked. "Terrified," Riel admitted. "What if I make a mistake? What if Copper reacts badly to the crowd?" "Then we adapt," David said simply. "That is what this is all about. Not perfection, but partnership." Riel stepped onto the stage with Copper. Thousands of eyes watched her. She activated her presentation display, showing images of her journey from fearful observer to bonded partner. "6 months ago, I could not imagine touching a predator," she began. "I had spent my entire life choosing companions based on what could not hurt me. I measured safety in the absence of danger." She knelt down, and Copper approached, sitting beside her. "Then I met humans and their companions. I learned that they measured safety differently, not in the absence of danger, but in the presence of trust." She told them about the rescue, about Storm finding her when she was trapped, about watching predators save lives while gentle creatures panicked, about making the choice to try something new. "Bonding with Copper has been the most challenging thing I have ever done," Riel continued. "He is a predator. He has teeth, claws, hunting instincts, but he is also loyal, intelligent, and capable of deep affection. He chooses to be with me every day, and I choose to trust him." She demonstrated their bond, showing how Copper responded to her signals, how they communicated through body language and trust. She showed the enrichment activities they enjoyed together, the training sessions built on positive reinforcement, the moments of simple companionship. "I cannot promise you this path is easy," Riel said. "It requires patience, study, and a willingness to be vulnerable. But I can promise you it is worthwhile. The bond one share with Copper is stronger than any I have known, precisely because it is built on mutual choice rather than mutual helplessness." The presentation ended to mixed reactions. Some applauded enthusiastically. Others sat in uncomfortable silence. Many simply looked thoughtful. But afterwards, dozens approached her with questions. Real questions, not challenges. They wanted to know about training methods, about choosing compatible species, about overcoming fear. David joined her, and together they spent hours answering questions, sharing knowledge, breaking down barriers built over millennia. As the day ended, Riel found herself on the observation deck where she had first committed to this path. Copper dozed at her feet, tired from the day's activities. David and Storm joined them, sitting in comfortable silence. "How many do you think will actually follow through?" Riel asked. "How many will move past curiosity to commitment? Does it matter?" David replied. "Every person who asks questions, who considers a different approach, who sees their companion animals as partners rather than possessions, that is progress." Riel watched the stars through the viewport, Kappa's warm weight against her leg. David was right. Change happens slowly, one bond at a time. Somewhere in the galaxy, another being was questioning the old ways, wondering if safety and connection could coexist, considering the possibility that the strongest bonds were built with those who could hurt you but never would. The future was not written yet. But for the first time in galactic history, It included the possibility that companionship meant more than choosing the weak to feel safe. IT meant choosing the strong and earning their trust. IT meant choosing family.